once that shift has occurred, if it's clear, if the gist of what has been realized is clear, then you're out of the world of maps and paradigms. Can non-duality and awakening be reduced to brain function? So the question arises from a couple of people who have sent me a video, the same video actually, strangely enough, so made me think to actually answer it. But I could tell because they asked that they're concerned about this, like that there's a sort of problem with this. And essentially there's a video that says, oh, well, there's more than one, but that non-duality and or awakening realization can be explained by brain function one way or another, whether it's like it's a right brain function, which doesn't experience boundaries, etc. Whereas left brain function is more logical, theoretical, separation-based, all of it, right? Or whether it has to do with brain centers associated with the default mode network, et cetera, et cetera. But what I wanted to address is it's interesting to me that that's a problem for some people, that these maps or paradigms. And maybe I'll just sort of unpack how it's hard for me to even perceive why it's a problem. Some people get really triggered by like what they call materialism, the view of materialism, the philosophy of materialism, that somehow matter creates consciousness, right? That's really triggering for some people, and they like almost feel like they need to reject it or need to refute it, right? So let's just back up and start from the beginning when it comes to awakening and realization, which I always try to do. I try to make it as direct and simple and personally applicable as I can. And what I've often said, and I find to be true again and again and again, the first stage, the first step of realization, the first significant shift of realization is to shift out of the illusion of paradigms defining reality, the illusion of thoughts, beliefs, views, and maps defining reality. This is just the beginning. But it's a big shift. It's usually a very big shift. Often it's such a big and dramatic shift, even people who have come from spirituality are surprised by it, that they think it's something different or special, or like some people even think they're the only ones who've ever had it, or some really skewed version of that. But it's a big deal. And once that shift has occurred, if it's clear, if the gist of what has been realized is clear, then you're out of the world of maps and paradigms. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to reject maps any more than you believe in maps. Like whether it's a spiritual map or a Buddhist map or a Dzogchen map or a Zen map or some contemporary map someone made up about anything, realization, stages of awakening, an interpretation map of Buddhism, right? There's all kinds of interpretations. An interpretation map of Hinduism, an interpretation map of the Upanishads, of the Pali Canon, or a scientific map. This is the way the brain function works. This is the way consciousness functions. It's created by this, or it is the primary one and it creates everything else, right? There's another map that says consciousness is primary. Everything's made out of consciousness, right? So to me, all of these are equally thought. They're all equal. They're just thoughts. They're views and paradigms you're holding on to keep yourself from dropping into deeper realization. That's all that's happening. What I'm talking about is beyond paradigms, always, always. Beyond views, always. One of the videos, this video someone sent me, one of the conclusions it made was that the left brain has the view of separation and self and other and all of it, and the right brain has a view of sort of universality, non-division, etc. And then the conclusion was they're both views. And if you look at the paradigm that way, first of all, it's not that simple as far as brain function anyway, but that's a whole other story. If you look at it this way, then yes, you're talking about two different ways that the brain can put views together. These are still views. These aren't realization. These are views, right? They're ways of mapping. What I'm talking about is showing how to realize what is beyond maps, what is beyond mapping, what is beyond any paradigm, what is it beyond any way you can arrange thoughts and beliefs, whether it's scientific or spiritual or woo-woo or not woo-woo or skeptical or, again, these are all maps, all beliefs, all paradigms. What we're talking about here has to go beyond that. And again, that is the first step. That's the first real step. And it's critical. It's also in your immediate experience, of course, always. Yeah. And then conclusions that can be made from this stuff. Unfortunately, in this video, there was a sort of conclusion made that like, well, that's just how the brain is already. It's functioning normally. It's normal to have one side saying this and one side saying that. And thus, there's kind of nothing to do, right? There's no reason to wake up, or enlightenment is not, it's whatever. Well, okay, now this is just a practical issue that I have with that type of message is, well, fat lot of good that does you when you're suffering. Again, going back to the practical, starting from the beginning. The reason we do this is because we're suffering, not because we don't understand how the brain functions, not because we want to know what enlightenment is. That's very superficial stuff, right? Intellectual curiosity is very superficial in what we're talking about. It's maybe the starting point, maybe. But even then, it tends to be a trap for people. We're talking about suffering here. We're talking about down and dirty. It feels really horrible to be alive. It feels horrible to be me, stuck in this body, in this mind, in this paradigm, in this world of struggle and concepts and ideas and beliefs and thoughts. Like that's how it was for me. That's the starting place. It's nothing to do with curiosity or intellectual anything, but to discount it based on intellectual seeming understanding is a complete waste of time when it comes to awakening and what we do here. So I would say, don't worry about it. Don't worry about how this lands for you. Don't worry about if it shakes your idealistic sort of as a standpoint as opposed to materialism. If it shakes that foundation for you, don't worry about it. It's a foundation. It's a paradigm. Both of them are paradigms. Materialism, idealism, rationalism, empiricism. These are paradigms. We're going to go beyond all of that. I'm going to show you how to do that. That's the point of all of this. Every video you watch on this channel, that's what it's about. It doesn't matter. You're not worried about this in the way you think you are. You're not worried about holding a view that it is rationalistic or it is materialistic or it is non-scientific or it is scientific, et cetera, et cetera. One of the questioners I had send me something. They said it feels too reductionistic, like there's a loss of awe, there's a loss of wonder. Trust me, with realization, there's no loss of wonder. There's no loss of wonder. There's no end to wonder. There'll be times when the wonder, the mystery is so profound, it's just too much. Like it's and that's what we could say is, if you want to, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but if you want to try to map brain function onto this, the apparatus of the brain, right? The apparatus of the produced experience of consciousness itself is the barrier. It is the barrier because it's making things look a certain way. Things aren't a certain way. It's making it seem like a view is the way we have to experience reality through a view, through a paradigm, even a paradigm of universal unbound consciousness, still a paradigm. And I do talk about how to work with unbound consciousness in unbound consciousness, how to learn the tremendous insight that's gained through that recognition. And yet to say that's caused by the brain could be very accurate. So what though? We're going to go beyond that. And there is a way to go beyond view, beyond inherent view specifically. These phrases that become very paradoxical do point to something. And it has nothing to do with paradigms or brain mapping or any of that stuff. But they're also very paradoxical. It's the kind of thing until the realization is clear, you won't get it. It'll sound like word salad, like form is emptiness and emptiness is form. These are very specific, salient ways of pointing. Total exertion, another one. So shunyata. So these mean something, they point to something, but what they point to is not a view. It has nothing to do with paradigms. It has nothing to do with form. It is beyond the illusion of form, and form is an illusion, which I can also show you scientific backing on that if you really want it. But you can't talk about it biologically. You have to talk about it in a much more fine, granular, nuanced way. You have to talk about it in terms of quantum entanglement, essentially is what it comes down to with that. Or in terms of the special theory of relativity, when we talk about light. I have a video about that if you're interested. But yeah, even that's just for fun, right? Don't know what else to say about this. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about a paradigm being threatened, or if you feel something, go into that. If there's something that feels frustrated or upset because something's being taken away from you or the rug's being pulled, go there. Go to the feeling of it. Don't worry about what it means. Don't worry about the thoughts. Don't worry about someone else's ideas or paradigms about whether it's scientific or non-scientific, or consciousness creates this or this creates consciousness. And these are thoughts, just concepts, meaningless. We're going way beyond that. So hopefully that's a bit helpful, but it is what it is. People get fixated in all kinds of ways. And if you think you got it, if you think you've encapsulated it with thought and belief, no matter what that is, whether it's scientific or otherwise, there's a lot more to see.